Cypress Development Corp's flagship lithium project is located just east of Albemarle's Silver Peak mine in the heart of Clayton Valley, Nevada. A 12-hole exploration drill program for lithium-enriched claystone on Cypress's 100% controlled properties is now underway. Cypress Development Corp trades on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol CYP, the pink CYDVF, and on Frankfurt C1Z1. For more information, please visit our website, cypressdevelopmentcorp.com.
Welcome to the Goddard Report. Comments made on the Goddard Report and TalkDigitalNetwork.com are an expression of opinion only. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is award-winning investigative reporter Bob Mackin, publisher of TheBreaker.News. Welcome back to the show, Bob.
Thank you.
Bob, the executive from Huawei being held in Canada for possible extradition to the U.S., she now wants to have a hearing in September about abuse of process. Is this just another way to wiggle out, or does she have any hope?
Well, let's see what their arguments are like. They're going to be looking in September 1st to try to get more evidence. The defense says it needs more evidence to be disclosed by the prosecutors, by the Canadian government. They're also trying through the access to information system to get more information out of the government about the arrest on December 1st at Vancouver International Airport. And they want to know what the government has so that they can prepare their case. It's pretty standard, and it's actually mandated by court precedents that prosecutors have to share their case essentially with the defense, so the defense can answer to the charges. And of course, it all gets tested in court eventually in front of a judge. They're talking, lawyers, the four lawyers for Meng Wanzhou are essentially talking about strategies in open court to try to head off the whole extradition case itself. That they say that if they're successful at proving abusive process, convincing a judge that there was abusive process, either in the arrest and detention at the airport or in the political interference that they say was caused when President Donald Trump said things publicly and also on Twitter, that this case could be a potential bargaining chip in a trade deal. If they say if they succeed on one of those two tracks, then the whole extradition case can be thrown out. But that remains to be seen, of course. And so this will start at the end of September. Still no date yet for the actual extradition hearing, but there could be more in court in January. So this is stretching out, and depending on what the court decides on any of the applications from the defense, they could always go to appeal it. This is international geopolitics. This is international business, and Huawei is one of the biggest businesses in the world, backed by the Chinese government. This is going to be fascinating, and there's no end in sight.
Now, of course, Huawei denies that they're a spy agency for the Chinese government, but if they weren't so important to the Chinese government, why would China be doing things like banning Canadian pork and canola?
Oh, yeah, this whole tit-for-tat escapade is quite fascinating, and a company of Huawei's stature, well, like any Chinese company, they're subject to Chinese laws and subject to the whims of the Chinese government, and they're subject to policies such as having a Chinese Communist Party cell inside the company. So as much as they can try to say that they're not beholden to the Chinese government allows them to exist. The Chinese government is a major customer of theirs, and the Chinese government, like any host government, has certain laws that affect the business. And in China, of course, there is no rule of law. It's rule by law.
Yes, and if there isn't a law, they'll make one up for you.
Or they'll decide different ways to either apply the laws or not apply the laws, or to apply pressure on a company to act in a way that that meets the strategic needs of the political leadership, and in this case, the ultimate leader is Xi Jinping.
We'll have more with Bob Mackin right after this.
Arctic Star Exploration, operated by a team of proven mine finders, is focused on diamonds in Finland and the Northwest Territories of Canada. Work programs are underway in Finland and Canada. Arctic Star trades on the TSX Venture Exchange symbol ADD, on Frankfurt symbol 82A1, and the OTCQB symbol ASDZF. Please visit our website arcticstar.ca or call us at 604-689-1799.
Grand Portage Resources recently completed the 2018 drill program on its 100% controlled Herbert Gold Discovery property located in the prolific Juneau Belt in southeast Alaska. Drill results are expected through late 2018. Past drill results included numerous multi-ounce gold assays on multiple veins. Grand Portage trading symbols are GPG on the TSX Venture, GPTRF on the OTCQB, and GPB on Frankfurt. For more information, please visit our website, grandportage.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Bob Mackin. Bob, Nanaimo has been an NDP stronghold both provincially and federally, yet the Green Party candidate won the federal by-election there earlier this week. What happened to the NDP?
Well, the NDP were hoping to get a bit of a hat trick. They had Leonard Krogh, the MLA, decide to run for the mayoralty. He won back in October. And when that happened, his seat opened up, and they had to fill that. Well, they took Sheila Malcolmson, the member of Parliament for Nanaimo Ladysmith, and encouraged her to run provincially. She won in that by-election back in the end of January. So then there was the chore of filling the seat that she left, and the NDP didn't come anywhere close to doing so. In fact, they finished behind the runner-up Conservative, as Paul Manley, son of a former NDP MP, won it for the Greens. You know, Paul Manley is a local video producer in Nanaimo, and the Manley name means something in Nanaimo. It means a lot more than Chamberlain, Bob Chamberlain, who was the Union BC Indian Chiefs Vice President that ran for the NDP, and someone who had very little connection to Nanaimo in contemporaneous years. He had gone to high school there. That was about his closest connection to Nanaimo. He had some other connections which were questionable, to say the least, in this political environment. I found last November that he had attended a federal Liberal fundraiser in West Vancouver that was hosted by Pam Goldsmith-Jones, local MP. That's where Justin Trudeau went and had cocktails with about 70 people on November 1st at the Glen Eagles Golf Course Clubhouse. And Bob Chamberlain's name appeared on the list of attendees for this event, and so did the name of his partner, Melissa Louie, who is a lawyer with a First Nations-focused law firm in West Vancouver. And when I tried to contact Bob Chamberlain last November when I was doing a story, got no reply to my phone call or email, no comment whatsoever at the time. And I pointed that out in social media when he got the nomination of this little conflict there, that just a few months earlier he had donated to the federal Liberals, and it turned out to be a donation of just under $1,400 for himself and just under $1,400 for his partner, Melissa Louie. And his explanation was that he was going there to support Pam Goldsmith-Jones. That was his story. I didn't really buy it, because here's a political leader within the First Nations community who had actively protested against the Liberals' broken promises. He actively protested against the Kinder Morgan pipeline, which eventually was bought using our money by Trudeau. And here he was going to a Trudeau fundraiser and claiming it was because of his friend Pam Goldsmith-Jones. I suggested in an editorial that if he really wanted to support his friend Pam Goldsmith-Jones, he had other ways to do so. Pam Goldsmith-Jones has a birthday once a year, and Pam Goldsmith-Jones celebrates Christmas also once a year, and that's a good way to support your friends and celebrate your friends, share some time with them. If to do it then, and Elections Canada doesn't really pay attention to those occasions, but it does pay attention when there are political fundraisers that people are paying more than $1,000 each to go to. The other interesting aspect was Melissa Louie, who is a lawyer. I found in the Elections Canada database that her donation to attend that event was attached to the postal code of her law firm. Political donations in Canada are by individuals only. That's what the law says. You can't be a corporation or a union or a society or anything else and donate to a political party. She claimed that it wasn't connected to her law firm. She said that that's just where she spends a lot of time and has her mail delivered because she spends so much time at her law firm, even though her law firm is not her life. So that's what she was saying on Twitter. And funny enough, as it got closer to the election, it turned out that her Twitter account was locked. It may have been locked because of some comments she made on Twitter. One of them directed at me that essentially she said in a nutshell that people aren't accountable to newspapers and don't owe anything to newspapers, which is kind of a funny thing to say for someone who at the time was hoping to become the wife of a member of parliament, to be close to power and to serve the public and be paid in the public dime. Newspapers play an important role here in Canadian society. They're protected constitutionally, and they're a key way of communicating messages and encouraging good public debate on public policy. And here she was hoping to become the wife of a member of parliament and just generally disparaging the media. I found that rather odd. And anyways, her Twitter account was locked and only could be seen by her friends and family who were followers of hers. That's not something you see very often in a political campaign. So from my standpoint, it appeared that the NDP realized as it got closer to Election Day that it did not pick the right candidate, did not pick a good local candidate, and picked someone who had some questions to be asked of him, and the answers that he gave were not terribly satisfactory. But ultimately the local people in Nanaimo, Ladysmith, answered as loudly as they could during a by-election. By-elections don't always garner the biggest levels of voter turnout, but they decided on that night that they weren't happy with the other parties, definitely not happy with the NDP, but very angry at the Liberals, who were left in fourth place. So they went with the Green candidate, and suddenly Elizabeth May's caucus is doubled. There's two Greens, and the question is, well, is this a hint of more to come? Could someone like Jody Wilson-Raybould jump into the mix and become a Green, run for the Greens in the October election? Could there be others that might find the same type of support, especially in Vancouver Island, and take away seats from the NDP? Could there be, like we saw in the 2017 British Columbia provincial election, a bit of a Green wave as people from across the political spectrum found their local Green candidate, parked their vote there, partly as a protest against that which is in power? Yeah, the federal Liberals are slumping in the polls, and doesn't look good for Justin Trudeau. We're still many months away from the election, but who would have thought that in April of and May 2019 that Justin Trudeau would be people would be talking about Justin Trudeau actually losing the prime ministership, but it all happened since January as things fell apart after Scott Bryson had decided to quit, and the various changes that were made to the cabinet, and of course all the revelations that came from Jody Wilson-Raybould about how the political pressure was put on her to try to save a friend of the federal Liberal Party named SNC Lavalin.
Yes, and in the Prince Edward election, the Greens became the official opposition. Perhaps people, is it a protest vote when they go there, or do they think the Greens actually have something to sell? Because when I ask about their economic policies, I don't know if they have any.
Well, the Greens seem to have economic policies. I found their platforms when they run provincially and municipally, maybe not as much federally, but here in BC, here in Vancouver, that they do have some thoughts of business. They have ideas of the green economy. So they are thinking in that direction. I think it is partly a protest vote that people from around the political spectrum are looking for the next best thing to an independent. I mean, independent candidates don't have much success in the system, unfortunately. So they're looking for a party which doesn't have that negative history. There's a lot of negative history. The Conservatives and the Liberals, the NDP have been opposition once. But the Greens don't have the baggage the other parties do. there are voters that have left the Liberals and have left the NDP because they've had promises broken, and because those parties seem to be on the side of industry, or at least on unions that are involved in heavy industry. So the Greens offer some of those environmental voters something better for their conscience. There have even been some people, the Conservatives, maybe red Tories, who have found their way into voting Conservatives too. I've noticed that in the past. I think that they do offer another outlet for people to vote, and again, they're not likely to form government. But, I think people have also grown tired of the way governments treat people in Canada. Once they get their majority, they act as a 4-year dictatorship, and they don't fulfill the promises they made, and they sometimes do harm to government, harm to democracy. I think people are looking for another way that at least gives them a chance to go and mark a ballot.
Do you think the vote in Nanaimo also could be a comment on NDP leader Jagmeet Singh?
That I think is true as well. I mean, Jagmeet Singh, he was a parachute candidate into Burnaby, just similar to how Bob Chamberlain was a parachute candidate in Nanaimo, although Jagmeet Singh's distance of parachuting was much, much greater. I think he's still a bit of an unknown quantity. He seems to be a happy, jovial fellow. He's trying to break a racial barrier. I think that he also might have the problem in some parts of Canada that may not, unfortunately, accept someone of color as a leader of party. That may be factoring into it. I don't know. It'd be very unfortunate if it is. I think he's also a bit of an untested quantity because he's just so new as a member of Parliament. That may be the bigger problem, is he hasn't been on Ottawa every day, hasn't been at question period every day, hasn't been in front of microphones every day until recently. And at the same time as being elected in Burnaby, the SNC-Lavalin scandal was festering, and Andrew Scheer has tried to capitalize on that. So Jagmeet Singh has been trying to compete with Andrew Scheer for attention. And that's the other part of Jagmeet Singh's problem is what does his team look like? Because you've had people like Nathan Cullen and Murray Rankin, veteran MPs, people who are senior in the party, who've decided not to run in the next election. So what does that say about Jagmeet Singh if some of the lieutenants, the people that would pick up the slack and support him are deciding not to run? I think there might be a problem with party unity. I mean, there was always talk of a party unity problem if he had lost the Burnaby by-election. There was talk of a draft Tom Mulcair to come back movement. And we haven't seen the NDP gain much in the polls either. So that's a serious matter as well. But then again, 6 weeks could be a lifetime in politics. Who knows what 6 weeks could bring? Who knows where Trudeau could be? Who knows where Scheer could be? We could be talking a different story in 6 weeks, but Jagmeet Singh could be the flavor of the month, and someone who's actually looking as potential prime minister material. You just never know how this works. You never know how it works because way back when in 2015, a lot of people were talking about a prime minister, Mulcair, before the election, and suddenly Trudeau decided to campaign to the left and steal some of the NDP platform planks and attract those voters. You never know what can happen between now and then.
We'll have more with Bob Mackin right after the break.
Hi, I'm Douglas Mason, President and CEO of Magnum Gold Corp, MGI and the TSX Venture Exchange. A 2015 drill program on the LH property intersected several high-grade gold intersections, including 11 meters of 20.66 grams per ton gold. Additional drill targets on the LH property have been identified by a 2018 drone airborne magnetic survey to further evaluate a pyrrhotite-enriched gold-bearing system. Please visit our website at magnumgoldcorp.com.
Don't miss out. Stay informed. Receive the HowStreet.com weekly recap with thought-provoking podcasts, radio, and articles delivered to your inbox. Sign up for the HowStreet.com weekly recap on our homepage at HowStreet.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Bob Mackin. Bob, was the luxury car market in Vancouver driven by money laundering?
It sure looks like it after Peter German's latest reports on luxury cars. Fascinating look at what a lot of us have thought all along as we drive along the streets of Vancouver and look at the car next to us and see it's a car that could be worth the cost of a condo, and often has an N or an L decal on the back to denote that the driver is rather new. Yes, indeed. And also for people like me who follow the courts, that there have been a couple of court cases of some deals of sales of British Columbia purchased luxury cars that never really arrived to their destination in China. Well, Peter German found some fascinating information. Some of this information was residing inside the finance ministry because of the issue of provincial tax rebates that were given to many, many people who bought luxury cars. They applied for these tax rebates after they sold them to export companies to send them to China. But 5-6 years ago, there was less than 100 cars bought in BC, luxury cars bought in BC and then shipped over to China. That exploded to more than 4,400 in the 2016-2017 year. There's this gray market underground industry here in British Columbia of luxury cars being sent over to China. And the question that Peter German has is, well, where is this money coming from? And is it connected to criminal elements? Is it connected to the casinos and the illicit drug industry? That's a serious question he has after looking at this, because there were cases that, according to the finance ministry analysis, there was 1,000 transactions connected to one export agent in one case, and there were multiple transactions being done by single people who were applying for the tax rebates in order to do these transactions. There were other cases of people that his researchers talked to in the luxury car industry that talked about people bringing in bags and bags of cash to buy cars. In one case, a student bought $200,000 in cash to buy a luxury car. In another case, there was a car dealer talking about happening double digits times per month. People would come in, buy cash, and drive away with a luxury car. A lot of these were students, people that had no visible sign of income, and a lot of them were people who had migrated here from China. There was a common denominator that China was very much involved in this. A lot of cars are exported to China, luxury cars from around the world through mainstream channels. There's high taxation in China, but there's also rules about Chinese who import the cars. You've got to be a government official or a specialized expert. You've got to meet certain criteria. It's not an average person can just do this if they got enough money. This is most often done if you're a government agent. There are probably ways around there as well through bribery and corruption. But that's how it's done. And a lot of people there who are concerned about the car they want, car of their dreams they want, are also concerned about counterfeiting, because if you were to be in China and try to import it through certain companies, you wouldn't be guaranteed that the parts underneath the hood would all be genuine. They could have been replaced by something else. So there are worries about counterfeiting too, which is why some people will pay extra to go through an agent on this side of water and send them a luxury car, whether it's a new car or one that is a gently used vehicle. So this is a report that Peter German put out, and essentially he says that these high cash transactions, when you're talking about $10,000 or more in cash, they should be given the same checks and balances as cash that's used at casinos. And this is another case of the federal government needing to pick up its socks and change its policies.
And to this point, we still don't have any federal officers appointed to look after money laundering in BC.
Well, we don't know what's happened in recent weeks since that bombshell, but that bombshell several weeks ago from Peter German was quite unsettling, that the anti-money laundering squad in the federal wing of the RCMP dedicated to BC had just a handful of officers. About 5 officers were actually actively on the job, but they were focusing on civil forfeiture cases instead of doing actual criminal investigations. And the rest of them were either seconded elsewhere or on health leave, or there were just empty chairs of people that had not been hired. A big disappointment for British Columbians, hoping that the federal police agency, who we pay dearly to operate every year, was not fulfilling its mandate in this very important file. And it's not as if people woke up just recently and said, hey, there's money laundering. This has been festering for years.
Is it true that the vice president of TransLink was spying on the people who protested against the B line in West Vancouver?
Yeah, Steve Vanagas, I spotted him back in December. There was that Saturday protest in December by West Vancouver residents in Ambleside who were angry about the proposal for a B-line bus to be pushed through all the way to Dunderave. They were angry because the bus, if it had happened, and it hasn't, they decided at West Vancouver District Council to end the line at Park Royal and maybe look at this again. But if it had happened, it would have taken away parking along key parts of Marine Drive in Ambleside and Dunderave, where there are many, many independent businesses, and those businesses rely on the traffic, the people coming and going in their cars to buy the goods and services. And that's why a lot of West Vancouver residents were protesting that day. And lo and behold, Steve Vanagas was there on that cold, damp Saturday, and he was taking photos. I filed an FOI request to see what kind of photos he took. And it was very interesting that he was taking photos of a crowd of people. They wanted to know who was there and how many people were there that day. And the photos they released to me were partly redacted. They put black boxes over the heads of the people. And again, in Canada, we can take photographs in public, and he was in public taking photographs, didn't do anything illegal. But the question is, why is a government agency such as TransLink acting in a surveillance mode? People who were peacefully protesting, is it just because they were protesting against what TransLink wanted to spend on, and something that TransLink knew would gain some opposition because of the negative effects on business? This is a very difficult environment to do business in, even though the economy seems to be doing okay. There's high taxation, and there's problems with affordability, even on the North Shore. And some of these retailers were saying that if this had gone through, this would have spelled the end of their business. So it also fostered a lot of discontent among West Vancouverites with TransLink. It's important that a public transit system is accepted by the public. It's part of how we get around. But in this case, you had TransLink doing things a little bit different. It's interesting to question whether this is normal operating procedure for TransLink. If they're out there trying to monitor who is protesting against them or who's questioning their authority. I asked for any briefing notes that were connected to this, and they say there were no briefing notes. So don't know exactly what they did after Steve Vanagas took these photos. But the people who were protesting definitely invited the media, and didn't seem to be necessary for TransLink to send their vice president, who makes more than $200,000 a year, to go there, because this was pretty well covered by print, online, and television media on that day. They could have seen who else was there just by watching TV, but they decided to not rely on the media and go and take their own photos for their own purposes to see who was in opposition to that plan to put the B-line on Marine Drive in Ambleside and Dunderave.
Is China going out of its way to influence elections in Canada?
Absolutely. This is something you got to watch out very carefully for as we head closer to October 21st. But they tried this last fall with municipal elections. Various business groups and expat groups were having meetings with various local candidates in Vancouver, Burnaby, and Richmond, and they were encouraging donations to these candidates. Some of these were in associations connected to the Canadian Alliance of Chinese Associations, a business association which is very Beijing-friendly, so Beijing-friendly that the head of that association, his name is Yang Tao Chen, was recently in Beijing at Communist Party of China meetings, the 2 sessions. He was given special access to those meetings as one of dozens of foreign delegates. Didn't have full voting rights, but he was accepted into the building in the National People's Congress to be there as part of it. And that association has exhibited many positions that are friendly to the Chinese government. Some of its members have been opposed to the prosecution of Meng Wanzhou. Some of them have been very much in favor of Chinese Navy action in in waters off China that are international waters near Taiwan and the Philippines, and some of them are also in groups that are trying to promote the reunification of China with Taiwan. And these groups are using Canadian media outlets, according to Clive Hamilton, who's a professor from Australia, who's written a book about how this is happening in Australia, the whole Communist Party influence campaign in Australia, and he just was recently in Canada and said the exact same thing is happening here. The same dynamic is happening here, where Chinese forces connected to the consulate are getting involved in using the fact that we have a free press to spread these messages, and they're using local channels to do it, but they're also using a very popular channel, WeChat, which is a social media platform out of China, which is actually state-censored by China, and it's used by a lot of people here in British Columbia. It's used by a lot of politicians, locally, provincially, and federally, to communicate with people who are in the Chinese communities. And this is, again, the state-censored media, and it's a media outlet on social media that is used by some of those same groups, which are very friendly with the consulate. And we're going to see in the weeks to come more people speak out about this. People who are concerned about what went on 30 years ago in Tiananmen Square, the Tiananmen Square massacre against the students who are protesting for democracy and human rights. That anniversary is coming out June 4th. And I think this is going to be a talking point as we go closer to the election. We saw what happened with the Russian social media influence on the U.S. elections in 2016. I think Canadians should be paying a lot of attention to what's going on in this factor, because this could have an even bigger impact on Canadian elections because of just the sheer numbers of groups that are friendly with the consulate and are using Chinese social media, who could be swayed and who could sway and influence the politicians to do their bidding. And some of these politicians are completely naive. We're running out of time as we head to the election, and this is something that Canadians have to talk about.
Bob, thank you so much for chatting with us.
Thank you.
My guest has been award-winning investigative reporter Bob Mackin. He's the publisher of thebreaker.news. If you have any questions for Bob or any of our other guests, you can send them to info@howstreet.com. I'm Jim Goddard. Thanks for listening.
Comments made on the Goddard Report and TalkDigitalNetwork.com are an expression of opinion only. The Goddard Report is available online and mobile at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. The Goddard Report is a production of Howe Street Media Incorporated.